Well, welcome to Cloud Currents, the podcast that navigates the ever-evolving landscape of cloud computing and its impact on modern business. I'm your host, AJ Farmer, Vice President of Product Management at TierPoint, and today I'm thrilled to have Mukesh Ranjan. He's the Vice President at Everest Group, and he's joining us today. Mukesh leads Everest Group's cloud and infrastructure practice, providing critical insights to industry leaders and decision makers. With over a decade of experience in IT and cloud services, Mukesh has a unique experience and perspective on the challenges and opportunities facing enterprises in their cloud adoption journeys. In today's episode, we'll explore the current state of cloud adoption, discuss strategies for maximizing cloud investments, and delve into emerging trends like AI integration and edge computing. Mukesh will also share his thoughts on the future of cloud computing and its potential to reshape business strategies. So Mukesh, welcome to Cloud Currents.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to the session.
Me too. So let's open it up. Let's just start with your personal journey. Can you walk us through your career journey and what led you to specialize in cloud computing and infrastructure services?
Sure. So, it's an interesting one, right? I did not start with a background in IT or, IT services as such. I am an electrical and electronics engineer. I started with a company called Tata Steel, right? And there too in its mining division, right? So it was core engineering, which I was dealing with. But slowly, I had a lot of other interests, right? I wanted to explore other areas and got a chance to work with the procurement team at Tata Steel, and there I was exposed to my first enterprise platform software, which was SAP. I think that's where the journey started, right? Post spending some time at Tata Steel, I did my MBA, and after that, I joined Everest Group within the cloud and infrastructure services practice, and I think the journey from there has continued in different directions, right? So when I joined, essentially we were a small team, of three people, and now today, we have grown to around 14, 15 people, or even more, I would say. So, when we started, essentially, the focus was on cloud and infrastructure, right? And at that point in time, the market used to see cloud and infrastructure, including everything, right from your cloud, traditional infrastructure, digital workplace, cybersecurity. Everything used to be under one leader. I think slowly the market has matured, and we have come to a place where all of these are very distinct entities. Even within cloud, there are distinct entities. For example, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, all of them have their own area of research. Enterprises need to know about each of them in a lot of detail, and therefore the market in general, right, the cloud overall, to understand cloud and to take the right decisions has become more complex. So decision making needs more thought through processes, and that's where a lot of enterprises also falter. So yeah, in short, that's how the journey has been.
So I think that's really interesting because when I think about cloud and infrastructure, I often think of it, you have to be a full stack engineer, right? You can't, the silos of specialization and passing things off from the storage engineer to the compute guy to the security guy or gal, obviously. I feel like that is just not how businesses work quickly and seamlessly and get things done anymore. And as you were talking about that, you were talking about these, I may have misunderstood, but I think you were saying that, as the clouds have matured, they've had to specialize in different areas and break them up. Can we talk about that part a little bit more?
Yeah, no, so you kind of got it right. So essentially, in terms of the complexity, right? So there are multiple moving parts, multiple components when it comes to cloud, right? So if you just think about it, today's if you just take any enterprise landscape today, right? So typically, most enterprises today are in a hybrid cloud of construct. So what that means is essentially they will be workloads on their on-premise data centers, on their private cloud environments. There will be workloads on AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud. There will be edge workloads, IoT workloads, right? All of these having their own, challenges, or their own, yeah, basically their own challenges to deal with, right? So potentially you need to have an in-depth understanding of each of these, what's going wrong, what's in the entire system, where is the, what can you optimize, right, what can you do differently. So basically it's tough, right, for someone to have an overall view just for. So what you mentioned in terms of full stack engineer, right, now theoretically that does sound brilliant, right, that one individual can do everything, right, end to end stack, and we do see demand for those kind of services, right. I'm not talking that it's not there, but essentially when it comes to the vast landscape of a cloud environment, typically you need a lot of expertise in different pockets, right. The full stack is one component of it, that there need to be few people who understand the end-to-end stack so that they are able to bring everything together.
Hmm.
Okay, but in general, yeah, basically the point was that overall it's a very complex landscape, and you need very deep expertise to be able to efficiently manage it, right. Many people are managing it, but not the way it should be right now.
Yeah. Okay. No, I get that. I appreciate you clarifying that a little bit more. I can certainly see too, as you were talking about, your hybrid cloud, you have something on prem, you have something up in the public cloud, you may have something on the edge. All of those things have their unique challenges. Some of it's just simply understanding the networking of how all those things get together, both securely and optimally, and what you might need. And I'm sure AI factors into that too. If you're trying to do any kind of, building any large language models or doing anything along those lines. Have you had much interaction with enterprises that are leveraging AI and automation to optimize their cloud operations? And if so, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So, again, maybe I did not touch upon this, but as a part of my role, I speak to multiple enterprise customers, right? Both from the demand side, supply side. So, typically, I'm speaking to multiple enterprise who are actually adopting cloud, right, within their environments. So, AI is definitely a hot topic right now, right? And almost everyone wants to be there. It's not that something. It's not that it was not happening earlier, right? Automation, AI, potentially all of it were present within enterprise environment, but generative AI, everything around chat GPT, a lot of marketing, a lot of how it picked up essentially is now driving the wave, right. So but when it comes to an enterprise environment, potentially something like, you need to think much deeper than what we think of when we think of chat GPT or a Google Gemini, right. Those can be underlying layers, but you need to build a lot of building blocks or modularities on top of these. Now, yes, almost all enterprises today are thinking about how do I integrate AI, and the way I look at it is it's twofold in terms of how this is happening. So it's cloud for AI and AI for cloud, right? These are the two distinct ways in which AI and cloud are coming together in enterprise environments. And let me go deep into each of these. So when I say cloud for AI, right now, what it means is that most enterprises today are experimenting with AI, right? So you mentioned LLM models. A lot of them are using public LLMs, or a lot of them are developing private LLMs. Now, to execute all of these, basically we all understand now that essentially any AI application requires a lot of compute, a lot of data to be run. So now it's not possible for enterprises to have their own infrastructure for all of these, and that's where they are at least starting with cloud, right. So they are using some of these hyperscalers or private cloud environments to run these AI applications. So that is where we observe, essentially it is cloud for AI, right? So essentially you have cloud as the underlying layer, and you have AI applications being built on top of it, and you are experimenting with that. So that's one component of how enterprises are, bringing cloud and AI together. The second component is AI for cloud. Now, what does AI for cloud mean is that essentially within your existing cloud operations, how do you use AI and automation to bring more efficiencies, and essentially, how do you optimize your cloud environment, current cloud environment? Now, that will include things such as costs, right? Costs, innovation, resilience, agility, right? Regulations. All of these are different components which can be impacted if people bring in AI and automation within their cloud environment, right? Often a lot of enterprises mistake thinking that it could impact just my cost, and they think in terms of productivity benefits just from a cost standpoint. But again, these are the different parameters which we can think about. And the terminology, at least how I use it, is basically I call it value from cloud, right, or cloud values. Therefore, so cloud value essentially is a combination of tangible and intangible factors, right? Your tangible being cost benefits and intangible being the benefits such as innovation, resilience, regulations, agility, and so on. Now, when we say AI for cloud, essentially how do you use AI to maximize this cloud value? Okay, so not just cloud cost, not just from an operational standpoint, but the overall value that an enterprise is deriving from its cloud adoption. Where can we use AI and automation to enhance and maximize that? That's the second way in which enterprises are trying to adopt AI.
Can you give me, because I like this, you've got cloud for AI and AI for cloud. In the AI for cloud, in cloud management, right? Can you maybe tell me about some really innovative use cases that you've come across in your research?
Yeah, good question. So when it comes to AI for cloud management, typically across the different steps of the life cycle, right? Or if you think about it from a services standpoint, across consulting, design, build, and managed services, there are multiple applications. For example, if you think about consulting, right? So basically, a lot of document processing needs to be done at the beginning. Now, earlier it used to take significant amount of time for people to go through all of these documentation and collect all of the inputs from different people through primary interviews, surveys, and so on. Now, a lot of this is being fast tracked using AI, right? So basically, you can deploy AI automation to gather all of these. You can extract insights from the database directly, and you can also collate all of these inputs more efficiently and so on, right? So that is one example that we can take at the consulting stage, which is from a document processing standpoint. Now it is also being used from a monitoring perspective, right? So if you're talking come to the operations part of it, so or let's start from the consulting and then design build, right? So if you talk about design and build, now in the entire process of application re-architecting, for example, right? Now typically a coder used to go in and search for different codes in terms of how can we optimize this application and so on. Now a lot of it is being done through AI. Now the coder is still present, but they are able to leverage AI and generative AI as an assistant, do a lot of quick searches and identify which code can I use over here? How can it be optimized in a much quicker manner? So the entire 6 hours, right? So replatforming, re-architecting, and so on at all stages. Typically, some or the other component of AI is being used to optimize this entire process. Now, when it comes to the run stage or managed services stage, we have things such as monitoring, monitoring and compliance related things that are being plugged in. That AI is being plugged in, and it is getting automatedly. It is being done in an automated fashion. So across the entire state, right from consult, design, build, managed services, if you talk about productivity benefits coming from AI, typically depending on where an enterprise is in its cloud maturity journey, right? If we consider a medium maturity enterprise, typically we do observe 30 to 40% benefits. Now these benefits can be in terms of cost. These benefits can be in terms of reduction in time to market an application. It could be reduction in response time for a particular issue that has come up in an application, and so on. And again, ties back to the point when we talk about productivity benefits that we are receiving from AI. You need to consider all of these factors, right? Not just cost as a single factor.
Oh, for sure. The productivity benefits, as we're being told, and I think even starting to experience that, if you don't figure out how to use AI to get that productivity benefit, to get that faster, you're going to get left behind, right? So I think everybody is looking for, how can this impact me, my job, my company? What can I do to go faster? And I think it's incredible. I think this is going to be an incredible time over the next couple of years. So I like how you were talking about, like, IT and skill talents too. I want to talk a little bit more about that because I think you have a pretty unique perspective and broad at the same time too. And so when we were just talking about AI, so I'm curious, how do you think that the integration of AI is changing the skill sets that are required for cloud professionals these days? How do you see that changing? How do you see them reacting to it, figuring it out? What do you think?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question, and I think very important one for almost all of the folks out there who are in this area, right? Irrespective of where you are, right? Whether you're operating at an L1, L5 level, or you are a CXO within an organization. Typically, you need to now understand how cloud and AI are coming together and what are the skill sets that you need to accordingly change. So first and foremost, what's happening, and it started at a slightly higher level, is that cloud the way it was, right? I think it is changing to cloud plus AI, right? Everything, the all of the conversations that we used to have within cloud, for example, you're moving an application from your on-premise infrastructure to AWS or your Google Cloud. We used to talk at an application layer, infrastructure and application layer. Now today the conversation is, how do we move this application to AWS? What are the elements where AI can be integrated along with it, right? So we are talking about infrastructure, we are talking about applications, we are talking about data, we are talking about AI, and we are talking about security, right? So it's not even just AI. Essentially all of these five things are now coming together. And what it means for anyone in this particular field is really they need to expand their skill sets, right? So potentially someone a couple of years back, sorry, who was a specialist in AWS, right?
Mhm.
And they had good specializations in terms of doing migration, modernization on AWS, and they were earning in significant dollar values. They are starting to become less relevant, right? Unless and until you kind of integrate and add AI skills along with what you already have, they are not getting the advantages that they were having a couple of years back. Now, not only does this apply to the actual folks who are doing the execution work, developers, coders, and so on, testers, and so on, but also the salespeople, right? So in 2020 2021 period, I remember talking to a few sales folks at Azure, and they were having such a great time because it was selling like hotcakes, right? And it was really easy for them. But now, first of all, cloud is not selling the way it was. Essentially, the nature of the consumption itself has changed because most enterprises today have already adopted it for the simpler workloads. And now, first of all, the selling is not easy, and now wherever it is getting sold, you need to have those data security, AI skill sets that you need to bring along. You need to talk about the entire picture in terms of what's going to happen. And I'll just round it off, right? So in the entire, if you talk about the entire IT skills market, right? The way at least I like to think about is it can be broken down into different levels of expertise, right? So one is for example, it starts at an application level, right? So that's the highest level in terms of we are talking. But when you start to come down, so within applications, what's the L2 level of skill sets that someone possesses, and then there is this L3 level of skill sets that someone possesses. Now, there are two ways in which people can differentiate right now. One is that you have this broad end to end capability and you are really having that full stack capabilities, what you mentioned. And second is you really specialize in a certain area. For example, there's a lot of demand for AI and analytics on Google Cloud, right? So if there are specialists who go very deep into some of these areas, they also kind of command high premium and are sought after in the market, right? So basically, these are the two distinct ways in which people need to enhance their skill sets and go about this.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. It's changing. I like how you were talking about how it starts at the application level and goes down, right? Because at the end of the day, you're getting the value out of the application. The focus has shifted there over time. I feel like we hit a few different things there. I want to dig into one of them. And that is sort of like how cloud adoption trends have evolved. You touched on, what happened in 2021 in terms of Azure selling like hotcakes, which I love that. I love that saying. Um, could we talk about, since you joined Everest Group in 2016, what are some of the things that you've seen since then? So we can put like that little snippet of trends that you were just talking about, maybe inside of a decade, right? Maybe talk about how it went.
That's really interesting one. Again, I touched a bit upon this in the beginning in terms of how things have changed, but let me try and break it down, right? So basically, at least when I joined 2016 to 2018 and 2019 time frame, I put that as one first phase. Let's say it's
Hmm.
phase one of cloud adoption. I think that is where enterprises had just begun to understand cloud in detail, right, and what all applications should be moved, and they were experimenting there, slowly doing the migration, slowly they were doing migrations and so on, and cloud market was picking up. In fact, if we talk from a growth perspective, I remember, it used to be somewhere around 18-20% CAGR when we talk about cloud services market. And enterprises were a bit skeptical, right? So, for example, there were concerns around security. People were not entirely confident of their data being secure in public cloud environments, and therefore there was a lot of focus on on-prem infrastructure. Also, there were private cloud environments also. So within this time frame, essentially everyone, right, all CIOs, their agenda was quickly, let's do this migration quickly. They did not really think in terms of what's the long term view. Everyone just wanted to be on cloud. And by 2022, I think a lot of people actually had moved a fair share, at least the simpler workloads, on cloud. And I think even within Everest Group, we saw so much of momentum for the cloud infrastructure practice in terms of research. So many people reaching out, trying to understand more because that adoption was happening so rapidly. I think 2022 onwards, a combination of multiple factors, right? One is definitely the entire recessionary environment that came up, right? And we are living in a prolonged recession. It's not come out as strongly, but that's how it is. And enterprise became a lot more cautious in terms of their spending. They also realized that we did not really think this through, right? We are moving to cloud, but what exactly are we expecting out of cloud? And that's when they started to question their investments
Hmm.
to their service providers, to themselves, to the hyperscalers, that what is the value that we are getting out of the investments that we have done. And that's where cloud value as a concept came up, and people started to, and that's where value led cloud services, essentially, what's the value that is being delivered, came about. And enterprises started to invest less in new cloud services and started to invest more in optimizing what they already have. That's where FinOps or cloud economics as a practice also picked up.
Hmm.
Right. So very interestingly, I was at AWS reInvent last year, and there were at least 30 or 40 niche or very specialist FinOps players, right? Just doing FinOps with, and even within FinOps, some very specific focus areas within FinOps. So just goes on to show the market traction in terms of cost optimization, in terms of optimization of what people already have. And it is continuing to be that way. It continued to be that way at least till 2023, and early part of 2024 also. And one part of cloud still continues to be about that, right? More about maximizing value, optimizing things, and so on. And then we had the entire generative AI,
Yeah.
that kind of changed everything again very dramatically. All of the cloud leaders started talking about AI, right? Earlier there were dedicated folks who were talking about AI, but AI and cloud, I think the both of them came together, essentially, and the lines got blurred. And essentially now, as I mentioned earlier, basically it's not wherever the cloud conversation was happening, it's cloud.ai or cloud plus AI conversation that happens right now. There were one or two more interesting things that happened in between that that died off. One was industry cloud, right? Basically it's not died off, but I would say that it got deprioritized because of the generative AI wave. But industry cloud was something that was starting to pick up in around 2021, 2022, because once enterprises had moved their simpler workloads, they wanted to adopt cloud, which was more easy to do, which was more plug and play and also suitable for their environments, right? So a banking enterprise, for example, wanted a cloud which was already tailored to their environments, right? Which had compliance related things that was built in earlier, right, which were optimized for applications that are used in the banking space and so on. So that's where industry cloud as a concept was picking up very rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
But due to the generative AI wave, it took a backseat. Now, the reason I bring it up is these are the things which I do believe that over the next 2 to 3 years will start to become relevant again. Basically, it will start to pick up now itself as the generative AI wave dies off. Some of these things will start to pick off again. Right, so 2025 onwards, potentially we'll start seeing some of it. So one was that. The second was so industry cloud. The second one, migration of complex workloads, right? So there was a lot of push for from hyperscalers, for example, to migrate mainframes on AWS because they were also seeing stagnation and they wanted these complex workloads which form a good 50-60% of enterprise states, right, which have not yet migrated to cloud. So potentially enabling enterprises to migrate those complex workloads such as mainframes or enterprise applications such as SAP, Workday, and so on to migrate to cloud. That is another thing that we will start to see more accelerated over the next couple of years. Another important theme that picked up in 2020 and continues to slowly pick up is around sovereign cloud, right? So this was especially relevant in Europe
Mm-hmm.
and it continues to be so. But 2020 and 2021 period was significant because I don't remember the name of the committee that was formed. I think it was GAIC or something, right? Where essentially a lot of it was like consortium where enterprises, service providers, government, everyone came together and it was Gaia X, right? Now I remember, right? So it was Gaia X is the name of the consortium. And essentially everyone came together and ensured that these standards are put in place. And at least in Europe, we see it being followed in a stringent manner now. And we also believe that this concept of sovereign cloud will be adopted in North America, APAC, and other regions also. It is being adopted at some level, but not like Europe, but it will start to become more and more relevant. And I think finally, there was one more theme which was picking up, died off, but is picking up again, is green ops and sustainability,
Oh yeah.
right? So it was picking up in 2020, 2021 because there was so much of work from home. People started using applications like Teams and so on, and the data center consumption went up. So there was a lot of focus on building green data centers and so on. And slowly, over the next couple of years, it was starting to die off. But now again, with AI and generative AI workloads, the consumption of the compute consumption, the water consumption of a query done on ChatGPT, the carbon emission of a query done on ChatGPT, all of these are significant in terms of numbers. And again, there is a drive to ensure that how do we optimize all of it, right? So basically, you want to focus on sustainability and green ops also in the near future. So these are a few of the trends which are also we will be seeing, right? We're already seeing some of it, but this will start to get more relevant in the next 1 or 2 years as well.
So I think those last four things you said were going backwards a little bit. Readoption of green technologies. Kind of put a pause on that for a second. That'll come back. Industry clouds, and I think you talked about complex workloads, and then a focus on cost optimization. Or was that the fourth, or was there another fourth? I'm sorry. That as far as trends, forward trends.
Yeah, so I think so. These were the few ones. The fourth one was sovereign cloud, which
Sovereign
I
cloud.
talked
I'm
about.
sorry. Yeah. So the question I had about that, if you would, is there was a huge focus on green and data centers and everything we're doing. A lot of initiatives, ESG, initiatives around. But I feel like what's going on with AI right now is sort of taking a lot of people to put that in the back seat. And then recently I was reading about protests about data centers in small towns, I thought was pretty interesting. People are going anywhere they can find power. Um, how do you see that, like those two things come together? Because I feel like they are complete opposites of the spectrum.
No, they are right, and essentially, I think that's where the objective is to build more green data centers. Right now, you can't do away with some of these, right? But essentially, the most energy intensive component of a data center is the cooling.
Hmm.
Now we see a lot of innovative solutions when it comes to cooling, which require lot lesser electricity. There are you know th- there are structures which are naturally cooling, right, which don't need any amount of electricity. um, and a lot of innovation is happening in this particular space, and
Yeah.
that's where the push is, right, to adopt more and more greener data centers. So whatever new data center is getting created, at least the focus is to make it more sustainable, more yeah,
Yeah.
and it is at conflicting roads, right? Basically, when we talk about AI consumption through AI and green data centers. One interesting thing is also happening right now, right now. So when 2020 2021, essentially this sustainability thing picked up, there were a lot of commitments by enterprises in terms of their ESG goals, carbon reduction by 2025 and 2030. So by 25, the period is approaching, and most of them are far from it. So therefore, we are also seeing a lot of focus on outsourcing or getting partners to come in and help enterprises achieve those goals that they had listed then. Right. So some of the goals will be pushed forward, but still, I think that's another reason why something like sustainability is going to pick up, because all of these commitments have been made in annual reports
Yeah.
of enterprises, and they do need to adhere to that as well. So I mean, that's another reason why this picks up. And
Yeah.
within sustainability, obviously sustainability is a very broad umbrella, and everything including your ESG, right, environmental social governance comes into it. But when you talk about cloud and sustainability, I think cloud sustainability in itself is a big topic,
Hmm.
right? So because you're using so much of compute capacity for each application that is being run, and the world is becoming more and more about applications. So cloud sustainability in itself is a big topic to
Yeah,
to
for
keep
sure.
talking about. Yeah.
For sure, but that makes a lot of sense about their ESG initiatives and what we're going to have to do in order to have all the power that we need to do all the things. So, I want to touch on another one, and that nowhere in that discussion did you talk about cloud repatriation. And I know, to me, this is a big topic too. You've got all these varying articles out there. Outside of the giants, obviously Apple, repatriated years ago. Dropbox did too, several of these. Are you seeing this at the global enterprise level, at the enterprise and commercial level? And if you are, why?
That's a good question, right? And again, I understand where this comes up, and believe me, I get questions from people within Everest Group that see, this article has got published, right? What's your point of view on it in terms of cloud repatriation? And we have explored it, right? Honestly, we try to get real, genuine feedback, because it's a bit hard to think that it's happening at that scale, right? Reason, because it's not that easy. Essentially, once you have moved an application to cloud and you think about bringing it back, you need a lot of skills in terms of expertise. Potentially, there will be disruption in your ongoing operations and so on. And generally, it's also not very cost effective, at least in the short term. In the long term, maybe you can achieve it, but in the short term, potentially it's not, right? And it also goes against the entire philosophy of digital transformation that most enterprises have undertaken. You rightly pointed out that there have been few use cases where Dropbox, right, I think is a major example. Everyone talks about it because they have shown big numbers in terms of the savings that they were able to achieve through repatriation. But I think it's very use case specific, right? And Dropbox as an organization is doing something which is very unidirectional, right? I would say so. Essentially, if you to talk about a lot of other enterprises, there are so many different organization or individual silos, organizational units operating, right? There are different business objectives that are there, and so on. So it's so we don't, yeah, so let me come to an answer to it, right? So honestly, we don't see it happening at that scale, right? So cloud repatriation, a lot of it is noise that is there in the market. It happens, right? So there are certain applications you move to cloud and you realize that potentially this was running better on an on-prem, or in terms of cost, you don't need cloud for it, right? You don't need to. It's a very stable workload, right? It'll run well. You don't need that kind of availability, reliability for an application. So you decide to move certain applications back. So even when you actually read articles about repatriation, typically what happens is that there will be one application which has been moved back to a private environment and an on-prem environment, and the way it's often projected is that this enterprise has done repatriation, moved away from cloud, and so on. So the um, it's blown up in proportion at times, and although I don't say that it has not happened, there are things within, but it's not that it happens at scale that you're migrating 100 applications back to on-prem data center. So that kind of repatriation does not happen.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So I love this. Let's keep talking about trends. I feel like you've given me some really good like insights, predictions, and reasons for those predictions. Just what you were talking about, taking a break from industry cloud. We're doing cloud, we're doing AI for a hot second here. And it just evolves into what something you talked about earlier. AI doing the monitoring and the regulations for these industry clouds, exactly what they need. This is all very exciting. It all pieces together everything that you're talking about. So let's hit a couple of other things like blockchain. So, what do you think about blockchain? What do you think about its future in cloud ecosystems?
Yeah, that's another good one, right? Potentially again a technology that I would have put as something that caught a lot of attention, and then we don't hear a lot about it now, right? So what happened to blockchain? So I think what has happened is that there was a lot of hype when blockchain came into existence. It had applications across different verticals, right? Obviously banking was the first one, and potentially it had the maximum number of applications over there. And a lot of banks also adopted it and are running it successfully. So that is definitely there in terms of retail, etc. Also, there were applications of blockchain, and it is being run successfully. But again, it did not really become mainstream in the sense that it's not suitable for all kinds of application, right? Neither do you need that level of coding and security, which are the key features of blockchain, right? Neither you want to put everything on a you know again, I don't remember all of the technical details within a blockchain, but I do understand that you need a lot of people who are mining, right? So it links very closely to Bitcoin also, that you are doing some of those mining activities and so on. But you don't need that level of security, right? So blockchain, I think, became relevant because of it being very secure, right? You can track transactions also back to points of origin and so on. Now, again, what I believe is blockchain will continue to exist with very specific use cases across different industries, right? So it's not something that will become mainstream and again start to replace some of the other technologies, but it will be complementing a lot of other technologies.
My last question for you, and I by the way, this has been one of the most fun interviews. But I love talking about trends and why and what's coming up. So, the last thing I want to ask is, what advice would you give to CIOs and IT leaders preparing their cloud strategies for the future? Like, what's some sage advice here, Mukesh?
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Again, because things are changing so fast, right? We did not know that AI and generative AI would change everything completely. So potentially, if I was answering it 2 years back, the answer would not be relevant and would not hold true right now. But I think, again, given what we know right now, right, and given what we can predict and think about. the way CIOs and IT leaders really need to think about, and it does need a change in some of the mindset that a lot of folks today have is starting to think more longer term, right? And have a more defined and strategic roadmap for cloud adoption rather than doing it in a piecemeal manner. Okay, so the entire challenge and the discussion we had around value today, all of that happened because cloud adoption in the period of 2020 to 2022 was done in a thoughtless manner. Most enterprises just went about migrating applications to cloud without thinking what is the value they are going to get, why do they want to actually do it. And the same is true today also, right? We are observing the same things with AI now, right? The cloud and AI coming together, that we want to implement AI in different parts of the organizations. Procurement teams talk about, give me maximum productivity benefits from AI, but what is productivity, right? Even that is not being defined today. So again, it's not really thought through in terms of how most enterprises are doing their cloud and AI adoption. The need of the hour really is for the CIOs and the IT leaders to really kind of prepare a more strategic long term roadmap, and then break it down into shorter checkpoints, right? So 2 years, 3 years down the line, this is how we envision our enterprise state to be, our organization to be. These are my business objectives, right? So today I am utilizing cloud for running certain applications, doing certain kinds of optimization, but potentially is a need to reinvent my business itself. Okay, right. There's so much that's changing in terms of all of the organization. Take example of retail, quick commerce is changing everything, especially in a country like India, right? It is just overturning some big giant like Amazon. So potentially there is a need to rethink your business model itself. Now, if there is need to rethink the business model, your cloud strategy also needs to evolve according to that, right? So potentially you don't keep running the applications the way you are running today on cloud and you're done with it, right? So it's a journey. Essentially, cloud adoption is a journey, continuous journey, and there are different components within the cloud journey that also are circular in nature, right? For example, cloud economics. So that needs to be, kind of reviewed at a very periodic interval of 6 months, 4 months, that, what's happening with my entire cloud economic story. Am I in place or not? From a value perspective, right? Keep checking at very regular intervals whether I'm getting the value the way I had defined it or not, and so on. So again, to cut it short, identify your business objectives, right? Define value that you expect out of cloud and AI investments according to that. Create alignment within your internal organization, right? That's very important, right? So create alignment within all of the key stakeholders within the organization. Implement it, right? Essentially it sounds very logical, but do the implementation. Often the implementation takes so long that everything changes, right? So implement it in agile manner. Measure your success, right? Basically, there needs to be proper monitoring measurement techniques, and then be agile enough to change it, or use certain metric, and then you repeat the cycle, right? So potentially these are the 4 or 5 different steps that most CIOs, IT leaders can follow to ensure they have a robust strategy going forward.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you very much for your time today. It was great to meet you. Good conversation. I hope you have a great day.